Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and you can still hear from my voice. I'm under the weather, but I've also pre-recorded this one, so if there's any bomb-dropping news, basically, and I missed it, that's why. And when I return from my trip, I will obviously start recording live again. But today we're talking about satellites, because satellites are apparently weakening the atmosphere, according to a new paper, which makes me wonder, is Elon Musk basically a Bond villain in some in some way, shape, or form? Now, here's what's going on, and I thought this was really interesting. Dead satellites falling to Earth could weaken the Earth's magnetic field. Now, under a worst case scenario, they could even strip away part of our atmosphere. Now, those are the findings basically of a new paper by physicist Sierra Salter Hunt, who warns of the effects of dangers of basically the growing satellite mega constellations, quote unquote, such as those basically launched by SpaceX, owned by Elon Musk. Now, Salter Hunt suggests that the quote-unquote spacecraft dust, end quote, from defunct satellites that burn up in the atmosphere may create enough magnetic dust to cut our planet's protective shield in half. The paper says that the growing volume of magnetic particles left behind from dead satellites could create a band of plasma dust with a charge stronger than the rest of the magnetic sphere. Basically, that's the part of the Earth's atmosphere that protects us from solar radiation. That net the net could create its own electrical charge and expose satellites to high levels of radiation and solar storms, as well as make it harder for rockets to launch new satellites and other spacecraft into space, as the magnetic particles could mess with the onboard electronics. Now, in this paper, she estimated that between 500,000 and 1 million private satellites could orbit our planet in the coming decades, with the primary aim of building mega constellations to provide internet, such as SpaceX's Starlink network that can essentially be spotted orbiting the Earth. Now, private satellites have also already begun to cause issues for astronomers because they can regularly interfere with radio telescopes and regularly photobomb cosmic images, as well as posing a collision and threat to other spacecraft trying to basically exit or enter the Earth and space. The biggest issue here, though, is when these satellites die. Now, most satellites burn up in the Earth's atmosphere to reduce the amount of space junk that's floating around, but that actually leads to vaporized metal pollution. Now, currently, it's unknown where all the spacecraft dust will eventually end up. But Salter Hunt suggests it may end up in the upper part of the ionosphere. That's a region of atmosphere between 50 and 400 miles above the surface of the Earth. It is here that basically she fears that the magnetic dust will cause issues, although not all scientists agree. And this is interesting, and it's hypothetical, for the record, and we need to be honest and accurate here. Essentially, this has not been peer-reviewed as of yet. This is her postulation on this, but it's a really interesting concept that nobody had thought about. And even if, or rather I should say, but even if the increased levels of radiation could strip out in our atmosphere, she also says that this is not going to happen overnight or within decades. It could take centuries, if not millennia, to fully occur. So while we're doing damage, it's very long-term damage. It's very slow damage until we're at a point of no return. In other words, we'd be dead, and our future, offspring or whatever, would basically have to face this problem. But I think it's a real interesting conversation to have, because one of the big issues that you've got, especially in aircraft, are things like particles. And if we've got foreign particles floating around that could potentially gum up the works, and if we are basically creating these medical particles that, as these satellites are burning up, so they don't crash into things or they don't leave space junk everywhere, but they're turning into these metallic particles that are potentially going to be charged with radiation, we might be doing long-term damage, and we hadn't even thought about it. And I think that's interesting. Is it going to stop progress? No, I don't think so. Not anytime soon, until something like this is confirmed and then debated. But it also makes us really understand, and that's my computer going off, if we've got essentially a new way to innovate, meaning we see this and recognize this as a problem. So maybe now we're inventing new materials that essentially mitigate that, thus improving humanity. So we'll see where it goes. But that, I think, is your interesting news, for this Friday. And I hope you enjoyed it, because I thought that was just an interesting read. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please attempt to stay private. Thanks, everybody.